Hey, everybody, how's it going? Justin Reed here with the Black Soccer Membership Association podcast. Videoing, as you guys can see in the background, not from the office outside of Washington, D.C. area. I'm actually on travel right now. I'm in Charlotte, and we're preparing for the North America Caribbean Training Method camps that are going to be coming up. We will be here in Charlotte from July 12th until the 16th, so it's going to be our first time here. It's a great opportunity to bring Black coaches together, and we'll work together to operate these camps and bring the best possible experience to the kids that we work with. So I wanted to talk to you guys just real quick about cancel culture. I know it's something that has been used, a phrase that's been used, several times, like during the presidential elections, and it's been talked about often in social media. And I just kind of wanted just to bring to the point that, as Black folks and, as a race, we're not all the same, right? So we don't all think the same. So even like take my brother, for example, he and I, we might be from the same parents, but we're total opposites, just in our personalities, our beliefs, and so forth, right? So we don't all think the same, even if you are related to a person. So you can't really expect, people who are not related to each other to think the same either, right? So we don't think the same in terms of like politically as a race. We don't think the same socially. We don't think the same, or we don't have the same economically. So I think that's very, very important to kind of understand when people are quick to kind of press that button and try to cancel people for that reason. It's almost like, well, if you don't agree with me, then, you're going to get canceled. And I just think that's just kind of crazy. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because there was an article in The Guardian. Micah Richards is his name. He is a former Manchester City player. He also played for the English national team, and he's currently the producer of Tackling Racism in Football. So it was a pretty good article. I took a look at it a couple days ago. It actually came out on Friday. And it pretty much discussed, or what Richard says was that he was attacked by our community after, I guess, he failed to denounce the situation between that Turkish club. I got it right here in my notes, but I can't remember the name of the club. It'll come to me off the top of my head, but I know that Demba Ba got involved with the situation. And I know a lot of you may know him, through his time with Chelsea, but he does play for that Turkish club. And it was actually an assistant coach who so happened to be Black, who was told by the fourth official something to the extent of the Black one over there. So I know that Micah Richards didn't jump to conclusions like a lot of other people may have. And he kind of took his time to kind of learn more about the situation before deciding whether he was going to jump on board. But he ended up actually not jumping on board. And I believe he said, it was something that was taken out of context. Now, in his mind, he believed that our culture abused him. I think oftentimes the word abuse could be something that is, it's a very, very dangerous word, right? Because abuse can happen in so many different ways. And there's a difference between abuse and disagreeing. All right. So, I just kind of want to read some things here from that article. And I'm going to read like halfway through the article. So it says here, Richards does not pretend to have all the answers. This is actually when they started discussing racism. And remember, he's the producer of Tackling Racism in Football. There's a striking moment in his documentary, Tackling Racism in Football, when his father, Lincoln, talks about encountering prejudice as a young man in Britain. They had never spoken about it before. I don't know if it took him to a place where he didn't want to be, Richard says, as he remembers playing for Leeds City Boys. He has dreadlocks, a Rastafarian, and people at Leeds City Boys would do casual racism, sing Bob Marley songs. I would get racially abused on the pitch. He would get more racial abuse than me on the sidelines. What can you say to each other? He continued, Richards remembers being racially abused by police in Chapeltown as a boy. But if you have seen his pedantry, you will know he likes to find the positives. His huge laugh deserves a show of his own. Yet it is not always easy to find the right words, as Richards discovered when alleged racism from the fourth official, Sebastian Coltishu, sounds like that's his last name here, led to Paris Saint-Germain game against Istanbul. So this is the team that I mentioned earlier, Istanbul Basaksehir, I believe. I totally butchered that name, but I've recognized, I've seen that name before, and I know they've been a part of Champion League's game before, in the Champions League. So they ended up actually walking off the field. So like Neymar and Mbappe and all the guys, they all just got off and they just walked off the field. And I think they ended up playing that game a day after. So Richards continues here and he says, it was difficult because I only had 30 seconds to look at the incident, Richards says in his documentary. Richards talks to Andy Cole, who's the former Manchester United striker, about mentoring young black players. I cannot talk for everyone, he says. I can only give my experiences. And if you want to take something from that, then good. Everyone has to figure out life for themselves. I got abused. Second here. I got abused when I was on CBS for not condemning an incident straight away. I got abuse from my own black community, which was tough. All my life, I have been fighting for racial equality. But I have to ask about things that even I am uncomfortable with. I have to make sure I am well briefed so that I can affect the next generation. So Richards makes a good point in terms of like kind of just assessing the situation. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. I think that happens too often, too much with us as a race. We are a reactionary race. Like one little thing can trigger us, and then all of a sudden we just start jumping to conclusions. Now, Richards, on the other hand, he said that he got abused. And I mentioned earlier that the word abuse can be fairly dangerous, but I did a little bit more background information, did a little bit more research. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have any credibility. He seems like a stand up guy. But this abuse must have been something that was in private because I don't see anything on his social media sites. I went on his Twitter page, I went on his Facebook page, and I went on his Instagram page. Of course, Instagram is just pictures, but if you're really going to find anything, it's going to be on Twitter and people's reactions to things. So I didn't see anything. All right. But I'm going to take him for his word that, there's a possibility that our race jumped on him for not being compulsive enough to say, hey, you should have really gotten on the fourth official. I think that is crazy. You should stand with us. And again, this goes back to saying again, we're not all the same. So Richards may see things in a different light compared to someone else who may see things in a different light. And it doesn't mean that either of them are wrong or right. Okay. It's just a point of view. And I think, that's just very interesting, and I can kind of use my own example. The Black Lives Matter movement, as you know, I'm not a big fan of the foundation itself. I'm a big fan of Black Lives Matter, the movement and what it means, but the foundation and the way that they've capitalized off of the suffering of Black people and they've made millions and millions of dollars, I don't agree with it. And I think that they should be doing a lot more, but that's a totally different topic. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I really didn't understand why they were so focused on the killings of police officers and Black men and women, seeing that on a daily basis, you can go to the city of Baltimore and 3 people get murdered a day. I think they just finished up with like 365 killings in 2020, and they're on pace to do even more, this year, which is just crazy. Me personally, as a Black man, even me being on travel right now in Charlotte, being in the South, I feel more comfortable being on the road driving and not worrying about, a police officer, trying to stop me and do something, even though, I've been stopped in profile before. I feel less, scared about that than I do about like going into the inner cities, especially inner city that I don't know. All right. So that's the reason why I'm, mentioning that, because I really couldn't understand the purpose of Black Lives Matter. But I could have just canceled someone and I could have just said, hey, you know what? My belief is my belief. I'm not going to listen to you. Until one time, this lady explained to me, and this was recently, this was like sometime like last week or in 2 weeks. She said the reason why there's a problem with police killings has to do with disproportionate, right? The word disproportionate. And I thought that was really interesting because I've never really looked at it that way. I've always heard, people like on the right, on the Republican side, always say, oh, well, there's more, white people being killed than Black people. And statistically, yes, that's true because the population for white people is a lot higher than Black people. But when you look at the proportionate size, right? So I think there was something in 2020, like 430 white people were killed by the police, and then Black people, something like 210. Yeah, that's disproportionate, and that's a big difference right there. big difference in terms of numbers because the white population is 66%. And then you got the black population, that's only about 13%, right? So in order for that number to be proportionate, the black population would have to be 33%. So I got it, and it took me a while to get it, but I didn't decide just to cancel someone. I needed that person to explain that. And she was the first person ever to explain that to me. And so now I look at the Black Lives Matter movement when it comes to police brutality totally different. Now, do I think that the focus should be on the inner cities and the killings in Chicago and Detroit and St. Louis and Baltimore, all those places? Yes, I do. I still do. But now I understand a little bit more as to why they are marching in the streets. And of course, the George Floyd incident was just horrendous. Nobody would ever agree that that was okay, right? So that was just a terrible incident. But now I understand a little bit more, but it took me not canceling that person in order to get that. So I hope that we'll understand that and we'll kind of keep the dialogue open. So in the case of Micah Richards, I know people jumped on him according to him, and they may have canceled him, but I really wish that they would just really look at his point of view. And I wish that Micah would look at their point of view as well. But I think personally, we tend to be very impulsive. We tend to make, very, very quick decisions and quick assumptions. It's kind of like the saying, guilty before proven innocent. I kind of take more the Micah approach where I'm just like, let me assess the situation first and then draw my conclusion. I'm not going to draw my conclusion when you want me to draw my conclusion. I'm going to draw my conclusion when I'm ready to draw my conclusion, right? So I hope that we will do a lot less, canceling of each other as we continue through this year, have dialogue, discuss. And if we leave the conversation disagreeing, that's okay. We can always agree to disagree. But to just cancel someone out, you really leave out an opportunity to learn more. And again, I'll go back to my example of understanding why the Black Lives Matter movement focuses on the killings of Black people by the police. Now I get it. It is disproportionate. I agree with that. So a little less canceling as we move forward, and let's continue everybody to have the dialogue, and let's see where it goes from there. All right. So I want to thank everybody for listening. That was a really, really interesting article that I read. I really don't read too much over in the UK and in the Guardian, but it just popped across my screen, and I just figured I'd take a look at it, read it, and just kind of dissect it and see if I can find any parallels. All right. So thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the Black Soccer Membership Association podcast. Take care.